Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the life of someone who was, and honestly still is, absolutely larger than life. We're talking about the phenomenon that is Muhammad Ali. This is a guy who didn't just dominate the sport of boxing, he completely transcended it, right? He became one of the most recognized and impactful human beings of the entire 20th century. So we're going to unpack exactly how a young boy from Kentucky transformed himself into a massive global icon of sport, culture, and human rights.
And, well, let's just jump right in with the rhythm and confidence of the man himself. You hear those words and it instantly establishes his magnetic, iconic persona. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a poet. He was a master showman. This wasn't just empty talk. It was a rhythmic, almost musical declaration of his own brilliance that completely grabbed the world by the lapels and made them pay attention.
Section 1. The Rise of Cassius Clay.
So he was born in Louisville, Kentucky, back in 1942, growing up in the segregated South. He had to navigate some pretty intense childhood challenges, including severe dyslexia. But his genius, it just found a different outlet. And it's wild because a completely random childhood incident is what actually sparked this historic career. Picture this: a fuming 12-year-old Cassius Clay wants to beat up a thief who stole his bicycle. A local police officer tells him, "Hey, you better learn to box first." And literally, from that stolen bike in 1954, he rapidly climbed the ranks, all the way to a light heavyweight gold medal at the 1960 Rome Olympics. Just incredible.
Now, after making his pro debut, he got famous really quickly for his boasting. But here's the thing you gotta understand. It wasn't just blind arrogance. It was a highly calculated promotional tool. He adopted this whole art of trash talk after meeting professional wrestler Gorgeous George in 1961. George basically taught him that talking a big game would attract massive crowds. People would buy tickets for one of two reasons. Either they were hoping to see him win, or, maybe more importantly, they were hoping to finally see somebody knock him out. Either way, they paid.
Section 2. Becoming Muhammad Ali.
Which brings us to a massive turning point. It's 1964, and this young, brash contender is about to face his ultimate test. He's going up against the terrifying heavyweight champion, Sonny Liston. And look at those odds, 8-1. Liston had been completely destroying former champions left and right. Almost nobody gave the 22-year-old challenger a fighting chance. But using this unbelievable superior speed and mobility, he just totally frustrated the champion, ultimately forcing Liston to quit on his stool. Winning the heavyweight championship of the world at just 22 years old, absolutely staggering.
Right on the heels of that monumental victory, he made an announcement that frankly shocked the entire nation. He dropped the name Cassius Clay, stating it was a slave name, directly tied to a white slave owner. He had joined the Nation of Islam, and he officially adopted the name Muhammad Ali, which means one who is worthy of praise. As you can imagine, this religious conversion and the name change sparked immense public controversy at the time.
But he didn't back down from that controversy, not even a little bit. He leaned right into it. His words here were such a powerful declaration. He boldly refused to appease the white establishment of the 1960s, demanding to be accepted entirely on his own terms. He was making it crystal clear that he was establishing himself not just as a boxer, but as a deeply independent, unyielding social figure.
Section 3. The Draft and the Exile. So fast forward to 1967. We're at the height of the Vietnam War, and Ali gets drafted. This really poses a massive question for our explainer today. What did standing by his principles actually cost him? Because Ali publicly refused to serve. He cited his religious beliefs as a conscientious objector, and he famously pointed out the stark hypocrisy of being asked to go fight abroad while African Americans were being denied basic human rights right at home.
The institutional backlash to that decision was swift, and it was incredibly severe. He refused to step forward for induction 3 separate times. Immediately he was arrested. He was found guilty of draft evasion by a jury in just 21 minutes, and then systematically stripped of his heavyweight titles and all of his boxing licenses across the country.
4 years. That's the devastating cost we were talking about. He faced a $10,000 fine and a 5-year prison sentence. Now, while his case slowly made its way up through the appeals process to the Supreme Court, he was completely banned from the ring. He lost nearly 4 years of his absolute athletic prime. But during that time, he didn't just sit around. He toured colleges, speaking out against the war, and ended up gaining immense sympathy from the growing counterculture movement.
Section 4. Reclaiming the Crown.
In 1971, the Supreme Court unanimously overturned his conviction. The exile was finally over, and that launched an era of legendary, truly brutal clashes. The 1970s saw Ali engaging in these titanic struggles against undefeated champions. He suffered his first professional loss to Joe Frazier in the fight of the century, pulled off an absolute miracle in Zaire against George Foreman, and then pushed himself to the very brink of death to defeat Frazier in the Thrilla in Manila.
That 1974 fight against George Foreman in Zaire, it featured one of the most famous and shocking strategies in all of sports history: the rope-a-dope. See, Foreman was a terrifying knockout artist. Ali, who was older and slowed by this point, shocked absolutely everyone by just leaning back against the ropes, covering up, and literally inviting Foreman to punch him. He absorbed these massive blows, verbally taunted Foreman to tire him out, and then bam, knocked the exhausted champion out in the 8th round. Pure genius.
His resilience was just unparalleled. In 1978, he actually lost his title to Leon Spinks, a fighter who only had 7 professional bouts under his belt. But Ali came right back later that same year to win the rematch. And that number, 3, that represents history. That victory made Muhammad Ali the first heavyweight champion in the entire history of boxing to win the belt 3 separate times. No one had ever done that.
Section 5. Beyond the ropes.
Following his final retirement in 1981, his cultural imprint proved to be just as massive and varied as his boxing career. His highly rhythmic spoken word albums actually earned him 2 Grammy nominations, leading a lot of people to cite him as an early pioneer of hip-hop. He acted on Broadway and in films, and on a global scale, in 1990, he literally traveled to Iraq to successfully negotiate the release of American hostages with Saddam Hussein, all while dedicating his later years to raising crucial funds for Parkinson's research.
You see, back in 1984, Ali had made public his diagnosis of Parkinson's syndrome, yet he faced his declining physical health with this incredible, quiet grace, guided deeply by his faith. Having transitioned to mainstream Sunni Islam in the mid-1970s, he viewed his illness through a deeply spiritual lens. As you can see in this quote, he viewed it as a humbling reminder of a higher power, showing that even the greatest is not number one.
Section 6. A global cultural icon.
Despite his physical decline, his status somehow only continued to grow. He went from being a divisive political figure in the 1960s to a universally recognized icon. Just look at these staggering television viewership numbers. An estimated 1 billion people watched the Rumble in the Jungle live. And later, when he lit the torch at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, with his hands trembling from Parkinson's, an estimated 3.5 billion people tuned in. Those metrics cement his status as, quite literally, one of the most recognized human beings to have ever walked the planet.
When Muhammad Ali passed away in 2016, at the age of 74, the whole world just paused. The global outpouring of grief was really unprecedented. Tributes poured in from presidents, athletes, and artists everywhere. This simple but profound quote perfectly captures the overwhelming sentiment of a world mourning a man who had touched so many lives.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. How did a man who was once arguably the most polarizing figure in America, a draft-resisting, loud-talking fighter, transform into a universally beloved symbol of peace, charity, and human rights? It is an incredible testament to his unbreakable conviction, his undeniable charisma, and his genuine love for people. That metamorphosis? That is the true legacy of the man we call, without a doubt, the greatest. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.